It was boiling in the nose for
I was going to do some fresh air. It's getting a bit sore.
So I'll just say, my name is and it's the 30th of November 2016.
Right, thank you very much for coming in. Thank you for your time. Thank you both of you. I appreciate you coming in to speak to us. Just to, as I do with everyone, just talk through the formalities of why we're here, what we're doing. This is an informal fact-finding exercise. It's by no means a formal hearing. It is a chance for me as investigating officer to come and speak to everyone who has been named in any way about what's going on, why they think it's going on, with a mind to improving things. There has been little disagreement that the CLP needs to be worked on in some way, in terms of making everyone feel a bit happier about how things are being run. And so the aim of the investigation is exactly that, to find a way for everyone to work together and to unite people, so that we can get on with the business of being the opposition. That's exactly what we all agree on. The process itself, as I say, this is just a fact-finding thing. After today, and after I've kind of conducted all the interviews and reviewed all the evidence and so on and so forth, I will write a report and present it to the NEC's disputes panel, at which point it's obviously out of my hands because I'm not a member of the NEC. They will take a vote and on recommendations made and obviously discuss it, and if they ratify any recommendations, if any, that I make, then they'll be kind of implemented, as it were, and we'll try and kind of work together, and that'll be done in conjunction, obviously, with North West Region, so it won't kind of just be a washing our hands of it exercise. It'll be a kind of concerted effort from all parties to work through this. So I'll start on that, as I say. So I'm just going to pour myself some water. Does either of you want some?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
I'm all right, thank you.
You go on, yeah.
Sorry. It's just being so hot in here. It kind of feels like a desert a little bit. That's fine. So yeah, on that note, people on all sides of the kind of political spectrum really have said that something's not working in Riverside CLP. So I just kind of wondered what you think to that, whether you agree with it, whether you disagree, and what you, if you do agree, what you think is going wrong, where you think it's going wrong, why you think it's going wrong. So really just talk me through how you perceive matters, as it were, in the CLP.
But before I do that, could I be clear about what I'm being interviewed over?
Okay, so I'll kind of talk you through it really. The allegations...
Because I'm quite happy to answer that question, but I'd just like to be a bit clear about what the complaint is. The
allegations are that the CLP is, I kind of read off a few quotes, a toxic combination of unpleasantness and intimidation. People have been reduced to tears by meetings. People have suffered anxiety as a result of meetings. People are feeling fearful to come to meetings. People are feeling like they don't want to come to Labour Party meetings anymore. And when any one member of any persuasion doesn't want to come to Labour Party meetings anymore, there's clearly something awry there. I don't think anyone wants that. So it's why that's happening. If you perceive there to be a problem where someone might have felt intimidated,
because
or
my understanding was that I was going to be interviewed about an anti-Semitic.
Yeah, there have been accusations of anti-Semitic, as you may or may not know, there have been accusations of anti-Semitic remarks being made.
Yeah.
They will come up as part of the interview, but in order to understand whether or not an anti-Semitic remark's been made, I need to understand the general atmosphere in which remarks may or may not be received.
So, would you like to ask me that question again?
Yeah, so where you think, and if you think there's any uncomradely behaviour, let's start with that in the CLP.
Yeah. I do think there's been quite a lot of uncomradely behaviour in the sense that...
Sorry, just to say, if I'm a bit slow to respond, it's just that I'm screwing things down.
I mean, if I'm going to just use my own example, when I made the comment that I did make on the 1st of April, I was absolutely shocked at the response there was.
What was the comment?
My comment was, if there has been a rise in antisemitism, as our MP has stated, and she particularly said in the Labour Party, if there has been such a rise, could it be that this is due to, in part, due to the actions of the Israeli government towards the Palestinians? And at that point, jumped to his feet and shouted out, "That's atrocious, that's atrocious, I've never heard anything like it." And I mean, I was absolutely shocked at that response, and I consider that uncomradely. Yeah.
Have there been any other incidents, whether related to you yourself or just generally within CLP meetings or any CLP activity that you feel are unpleasant in any way?
Yeah, I think it's extremely uncomradely after what is supposed to be considered a private Labour Party meeting. That was on April the 1st, for Councillor to tweet.
Was this after the meeting?
After the meeting. And you have a copy of all of these things in a document that we sent to you.
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly uncomradely. And another councillor did the same. Also tweeted. And then following on from that, which I was only made aware of from a friend of mine, there appears an article in the Jewish Chronicle where has given an interview.
When was this? I'm not in receipt of
the
that.
6th of April.
So immediately, or a few days after the interview?
Yeah. You will have all of this in the documents
You're
that we
quite right,
sent
no,
you.
I have seen it. Yeah.
So you've got the articles, you've got the quotes.
Yeah.
In that article, not only does he misquote me and others, it's the tone in which he talks about us and members of the Labour Party that I found really difficult to...
us being...
Well, people, he talked about a small group of hard left people within the constituency.
Did he name anyone particularly? Or was it
No,
just,
he didn't, and I think they've made a big point of the fact that they didn't name anybody, and as though that made things okay. I didn't feel it did make things okay because the quotes were so easily attributable locally, and anyone who was there would know immediately who was being referred to. But I think to go to the Jewish Chronicle, he didn't pick any media, he went to the Jewish Chronicle, carefully selected, said that there was these people who were anti-Semitic, intriguists, infiltrators. I don't think those are terms that are very comradely. If he was referring to me as being an entryist or an infiltrator, I think I'm not unusual in being one of many hundreds, thousands who've joined since Jeremy Corbyn was elected. I'm 70 years old and I could have joined a party, in the Labour Party, a long time ago. However, I voted. This is the first time that I felt motivated to join a party. And I was really excited at the prospect and thinking that by joining the party I'd be able to contribute to policy, discussion and so on. And to be confronted by a totally different atmosphere, as though we're not welcome in the party.
Is that how you feel in a kind of normal CLP meeting?
Yeah, I felt initially, I think it's improved a little bit more recently.
I mean, how do you feel?
But I think the language used, and I wanted a chance to defend myself.
Of course.
There were other things he said in the article which I think were reprehensible, which is that people are waging a personal campaign against the MP because she's Jewish. Now, I come from a Jewish family, and I can tell you I would not be waging a personal campaign against my MP for the fact that she's Jewish. The reason I might, be wanting to engage in a conversation with my MP is because we disagree over the issue of Israel and Palestine. And I think as a member of a party, that's what you would expect. You would expect discussion over political issues.
How do you feel about the prospect of going to a CLP meeting? Well, do you have any reaction to that at all? If you don't, that's absolutely fine. I'm not expecting one, but I'm trying to kind of get an idea of the atmosphere.
The atmosphere sometimes is tense, although we've just had a meeting on Friday.
Were you there on Friday?
I was, yeah. I think people tried very hard to be constructive.
On Friday?
Yeah. I think if you ask most of the members there now, we're all really keen to get on with the job of fighting, and being a proper opposition to the Conservatives, and to spend so much time talking about to have this infighting, to know that the party is spending so much time on trying to do down the leader of the party. I think the Labour Party's become a laughing stock, and I think we are all really keen to stop this infighting and to move on and talk about the real issues to do with the NHS, to do with education, to do with all the things.
On Friday, then, on that note, what happened with the minutes?
The minutes?
Yeah.
There was a vote taken, and I think it was very appropriate because I think the chair actually misrepresented the mood of the minutes of the meeting that she was describing. I was there at that meeting, the July the 1st meeting, and one can't say that it was all done with consent. She used the word consent. And when it came to the vote, there were many people who agreed there had not been consent. It was actually quite an even split. There was something like 30 people voted in favour of the minutes, about 30, it was very even.
How long
similar number of
people. How long did that discussion take?
I don't know. 10 minutes, something like that.
Did you feel, given obviously that you quite rightly say that you want to kind of get on with tackling the issues, did you feel frustrated to be spending 10 minutes of a meeting talking about the minutes of a previous meeting?
No, I didn't, because the minutes are supposed to be an accurate account of what happened, and I think it's quite right that members should question. I mean, that's what presenting the minutes is about, isn't it?
Yeah. So going back to the 1st of July.
Yeah.
What can you kind of just talk me through the meeting as you saw it? It sounds like it was, well, it's been presented certainly as a difficult meeting, as a person in the room.
Yeah.
How was it perceived with when the agenda was dropped? What was kind of the reaction from the room towards what was happening, and then a confidence vote? How did you kind of see all that?
The room, for a start, was full. There were a lot of members there.
This is in the Aldonians?
Which showed the amount of interest. The numbers at every meeting are rising people are really engaged, you know, with the politics. This was a time when MPs had been resigning. It was an emotional time, wasn't it, for the Labour Party? And prior to that meeting, there were several groups that actually wanted to present motions of support for the leadership. And I don't think that's invalid. If you've got members of the Parliament who are having their say and expressing their views, I don't think it's unreasonable that people in a constituency Labour Party want to express their views. And I think there were something like 4 motions, emergency motions.
Was it explained why the agenda was amended or why the motions were dropped? Or what, if it wasn't, what explanation?
No, and I think that was the start of a problem in the room, because the chair just announced that this was going to be just a discussion meeting. She said she wasn't going to take any motions and she wasn't going to take any votes. And she said it was in her rights to do that if you looked at the rule book. Well, actually, if you look at the rule book, it says that, yes, she could do that, but she should be taking into account the mood of the meeting. If you look, you know, I did look back because I was really worried about, you know, what she said. So she'd taken it upon herself, and I don't think she did read the mood of the meeting. And it took her quite a time.
How would you describe the mood of the meeting?
Well, I think it was agitated. I don't think it was aggressive. I don't think it was out of order. I think people were just shocked.
Do you recall any incidents over either in that meeting or any that might have caused claims of intimidation towards anyone, or claims of an unpleasant atmosphere?
Yeah, there was one incident. There was a woman, I don't know what her name was, shouted something at you know, you're always causing trouble. It was something like that. But otherwise, I think the mood was just a very natural, shocked response.
To or to what happened?
Well, to her statement that we weren't going to have there was the normal agenda, which there would have been, you know, where you get reports and various discussions. Without any explanation. We had no explanation for why the agenda had been dispensed with. So it was a very, and we don't know where that came from, that suddenly it was only going to be about a discussion about the leadership. So I don't think it's surprising that people were questioning.
So you don't feel it was you don't feel heard?
And I'll give you another reason why I think we were surprised, particularly me in my position and the people who've been complained against. Prior to that meeting, the executive had met. Now, the executive has hardly ever met. I think it was only the second time that the executive had met in the year, which is rather strange because, again, if you look at the rule book, the executive's supposed to have quite a central role in organising CLP business. Well, this was only the second time that they'd met, and it was apparently partly to look at 2 complaints. One complaint, the complaint made by, and the other was a counter-complaint that we'd put in. The result of that.
How did you? I mean, what did you? I'm just going to close the window. How did you? What happened after that meeting that kind of made you aware of the whole thing?
Well, again, I would only have been aware of it. I wouldn't have been aware of it if hadn't been on the executive.
So just told you that Dave discussed it or whatever in the exec.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I thought that was, considering we'd not none of us...
What did he tell you?
He just said that our counter-complaint hadn't been accepted and that the complaint against us had been, and that there'd been no discussion.
Okay.
Again, I think I've contacted the compliance unit a few times to find out, will we have a chance at any point to have a discussion, particularly the people who've been complained against. Will we have a chance to counter some of these complaints? Given that none of us have actually been written to, until you contacted us, we didn't know officially that we had been complained against. We've had no indication whatsoever, either, that we'd be complained against, who'd complained against us, or what the complaint was. And the response I got, when I asked that question, I was told, well, the next thing that'll happen is after the executive meeting, the executive will have to write minutes, and at the next meeting, the minutes will be presented, and that's your chance to question the minutes. So we were expecting, at least at that July meeting, that there would be a chance that procedure would be gone through. There was nothing about the complaint on the agenda. So once again, there was no chance for us to have a say about what had been happening. But all the while that we're waiting to find out whether, we have been complained against or what's happening, our MP, they're going to the media as though it's absolute truth that there is antisemitism within Riverside CLP. And we haven't heard any, we haven't received any notice about it.
And of course,
that's another thing that, when you get to the July meeting and you find that the agenda's been, we realise that this serious complaint, I take that accusation really seriously. I've been extremely offended by this accusation. I come from a Jewish family, doesn't know anything about the history of my family. And he makes that accusation, and I if you're asking me about offensive statement, that is the most offensive. And apparently he said to somebody afterwards, I don't even believe she's Jewish. Now he called that offensive.
Do you know who said that to?
No, I don't know who.
Why did you who told you that?
Somebody he spoke to. I know, I should have found out who he said that to.
Okay, thanks.
Could I add a little bit
of
to
course,
that?
Yeah.
I'm offended because, for a start, I don't think what I said was anti-Semitic. I think it was a political statement, part of a political discussion. And again, when I read through the rule book, one of the things it emphasises is that there should be plenty of time available within a CLP meeting for discussion. And I think, what I said was part of a discussion.
What was when the statement was made? Was it in the context of a discussion in the Middle East?
It was in the context of our MP making statements in the House of Commons, making statements to a new group that she'd formed, but which never comes to the CLP meeting. And I think we're in our rights to question our MP about things that she's saying when it's about a very serious issue.
Okay, just before we move on. Sorry. Just before we move on, are there any other kind of concluding comments about the atmosphere of CLP meetings? And whether you agree, basically, with the idea that the atmosphere is toxic?
I wouldn't say it is toxic. I think what's happened, though, is it could be a lot better.
Yeah.
And I think if we didn't have that, if we weren't faced with a situation where meetings have been cancelled. Where the October meeting is made into a discussion about housing when we haven't had a proper discussion meeting for so many months, and we're faced with that, and members have to register for it. It feels like an avoidance of true discussion. And there was one person on Friday who made the point, it's terrible that we're in a situation where we're being investigated and it's our own MP who's asking for this investigation, when I and so many other people who've recently joined the party have worked really hard for the Labour Party. We've gone leafleting, we've gone door to door through the Remain, Brexit referendum campaign. We've attended meetings. I don't know what more we can do to show that we support the Labour Party.
We'll come back to the idea of how to make it better at the end.
I'd like to. Can I add something about,
of course,
why I've been so offended?
Absolutely.
I made a statement before I made this comment about if there has been a rise in anti-Semitism. I prefaced that by saying that I was from a Jewish family. Now, in complaint, he said Jews were offended in the meeting. And I took it to mean that he totally ignored the fact that I was Jewish. It was as though I was the wrong sort of Jew.
Okay. So on that, the comment itself, you emailed me. I appreciate that with what you said. I'm not asking you to recall the wording exactly because it was said in April, and if we could all remember sentences we said in April, we'd be superhuman. But do you remember any reaction beyond in the room?
Yes.
What was that?
There were a few other people. What's his name? Another councillor.
Okay.
Got up. And he started off by saying, Louise Ellman, that I don't always agree with you on Palestine. But then he went on to say, but, I really think, basically he was saying he also thought that the comment and the two comments on that occasion were unreasonable.
Do you feel that his... So obviously you've expressed your frustration with Councillor. Do you feel the same frustration towards him, or do you feel that his was put more
not
reasonably?
really. I mean, all right, he said it with a bit of emotion, but no, I think that we should be allowed to discuss these things.
Okay.
That's.
Do you
but
see...
I also remember that Louise Ellman said criticism of Israel should not be immediately thought of as anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
We took that, and I took that comment very seriously. But on the other hand, in practice, that's what's happening. Anyone who seems to criticise the Israeli government seems to be tarred with the brush of being anti-Semitic. And I would want to know after this, how am I going to be able to discuss, how am I going to be able to raise this issue in future CLPs without being again accused of anti-Semitism?
If at this point I'd like to say that if I ask anything that is contrary to what you're saying, or me playing devil's advocate, is just so that I can anticipate this from both sides of the argument. Because obviously you need to consider it from both sides in order to come to a reasoned decision about what's happened, the whole thing. Do you recall ringing into any answers at the end of April?
Yes.
When you said on that programme that you can... It's hardly surprising, and that's a quote, that the rise in anti-Semitism because of the actions of the Israeli government. In light of, and obviously the the Chakrabarty report came out after this, so not intending to apply it retrospectively, but in light of what she said about not falling into the trap of blaming Jewish people for the actions of the Israeli government, can you see that someone might take offence to that statement, given that it implies that it's hardly surprising that Jews are being blamed for? It implies some kind of complicity. It might. I'm not saying.
I don't think I ever did say Jews. I said the Israeli government.
The quote is that the rise in antisemitism is hardly surprising because of the actions of the Israeli government. Can you see that might be perceived by some as a complicity of Jewish people in the?
It might be perceived. It might be perceived. People. Yeah, it's quite possible it might be. But on the other hand, it might not be perceived. There might be very many people who would agree with that statement.
Indeed. I'm not intending to get into a debate on the actions of the Israeli government. We're here all year.
Yeah. So I'm not worried about that statement.
But do you
and
do you
can
see
I say
that
exactly why?
Yeah,
because the Israeli government itself has linked being Jewish with support for Israel. And so if they're going to make, that link, it's not surprising that people, it's interpreted in that way. That people are being anti-Jewish because they have made that link. In
light of the Chakrabarty report, discouraging that kind of idea of Jews being responsible for the actions of the Israeli government, would you make the comment again?
Yeah, because I don't think that's what I did say. I said that I think the behaviour of the Israeli government towards the Palestinians is not helping
would you
people have a good view of Jews, because that's what the Israeli government is doing. It's saying all Jews are Zionists. They think most Jews are Zionists. Zionists support the Israeli state and the Israeli government, and so.
Would you make the comment again? And I'm just quoting verbatim that it's hardly the rise in anti-Semitism is hardly surprising given the actions of the Israeli government in the light of Baroness Chakrabarty's recommendations. Would you make that comment again?
I would make that comment again, and I would take you back to a quote that I made that was in the Independent in 2014. You have that already. That the Community Security Trust in 2014, they themselves said that after Gaza and the bombardment of Gaza, that there was a 500% spike in anti-Semitic incidents. So my statement bears out what they said and supports what I was saying. So I don't retract it. And I actually think that what's happened with this whole anti-Semitism campaign, and I do see it as a campaign that's being waged as part of a way of challenging Corbyn, because he's known to have been supportive of Palestine. I think it's trivialised. And that doesn't mean that I don't think that people like Louise Ellman, Luciana Berger, other MPs haven't had anti-Semitic comments and tweets. But in a recent Home Affairs Select Committee, they themselves said over 90%, I can't remember what the exact figure was, the tweets came from America. And we've never had, if Louise Ellman is saying that, she's had lots of tweets, we've never had, or, anti-Semitic statements. We haven't seen any of these. And if they're like my statement, I just don't consider that anti-Semitic. So I don't know how to take that information. And I cut out an article about Luciana Berger and a case that went to court. Turns out the person was from North or South Shields, not a member of the Labour Party. You know, I think we've got to be careful when we make these accusations about the rise of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party.
Okay. Thank you. Going back to what we said earlier about you think it can be better. How? And I've asked this to everyone, and it's not a question I expect you to be able to answer because it's not an easy question. It's also my job, not yours. But what measures do you think could be taken to improve things and to ensure that everyone feels kind of comfortable in CLP or that they want to go, basically?
Yeah.
I
think there are a lot of things, really.
Yeah, we have this brilliant surge in membership.
Yeah.
And our challenge is to use that and say, what do you think that can be done to encourage as many of those members as possible to get involved actively?
Well, I would like it if our MP, others, were to stop going to the media, which is actually against party rules again, because I phoned up the compliance unit when we'd arranged a public meeting on anti-Semitism, and I phoned up the compliance unit and said, am I allowed to mention the fact that a complaint has been made against members of the CLP? And they said, no, you shouldn't. This is about private Labour Party matters. And so we've abided by that. And certainly I have, and the people who've been complained against. But other people haven't. So I think all this running to the press and talking as though it's absolutely proven that there's anti-Semitism and talking against members of the CLP, I think has just got to stop. We do want unity. So that's one thing. I don't think people should be running to the press. I don't think people should be using, quoting unattributable, anonymous documents. And I took out a social media policy of the Labour Party, and in it says absolutely clearly, anonymous accounts or otherwise hiding one's identity for the purpose of abusing others is never permissible. And I don't think...
I'd like to clarify that, as I've said to everyone involved, the document you're referring to is not forming the basis of the investigation. It's anonymous.
It may not be, but it's been in the Times, it's been in the Echo, it's been in, the Guardian.
I obviously can't
No, but if you're asking... what we want as an improvement, I think it's just got to stop.
I understand your frustration.
And one of my recommendations would be that this document could be given to members so that they start behaving respectfully towards each other.
I understand for your frustration. I can only assure you that it's that document, because I can't speak to its author because I don't know who its author is. Isn't forming the basis of this investigation. No,
fair enough, but it has been used, whether you wanted it or not. It has.
I'm
been
obviously
used.
aware of it.
Yeah. I think the whole organisation of the CLP could be improved. I think the executive could start doing the job it's meant to be doing, which would free up people in the CLP to have space to actually discuss. I mean, I joined the Labour Party to discuss policy. And it doesn't happen because it's taken up with long reports which could be given out to us in advance, and we'd have space to discuss policy. I think members could be much more involved in drawing up the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
I could think of lots of other things. But
well, if anything comes to mind, obviously you have my email, so you are
Yeah.
obviously more than welcome to email me with anything. And at that point, I can obviously say that I've got no further questions. I appreciate your answers. I appreciate none of this is particularly easy stuff to go over.
could I ask you a question?
Yes, that's my next point. If either, and both this is the point at which you don't need to be a silent friend anymore. You can just be a normal friend.
Right.
So if either of you have any questions about the process or anything like that, this is your opportunity to ask me.
Yeah. I suppose I was curious to know how this investigation is taking place, and I know I wrote to you, but I don't know whether you just hadn't noticed the question. But quite a lot of people at the CLP meeting were very keen to contribute to this investigation.
Yes, anyone that has, I'm certainly in receipt of anyone that has put that down on paper and has been sent to me.
Right, but they didn't know, you see.
In which case they are obviously...
how are they going to know that they can...
They've received an email, membership has received an email from the regional team about the investigation, to which they have replied with that.
So, well, one of the members was saying that she'd written to Anna Hutchison.
Yeah, they've all
they
been
didn't
passed
get a
on.
reply.
They've all been passed on to me, and they will get a reply.
Okay.
It's just a question of I have to work through these things.
Great. Lovely.
So that's just a question of workload.
Okay.
So I will of course get to every single person.
And I was quite surprised. I was with on Saturday.
Just to assure you that Anna has passed everything on.
Yeah, great. And I said, "Oh, were you being interviewed next week?" And he said, "No, I'm not going to be interviewed." And I find that a bit odd.
I've only received complaints about in the context of these interviews.
Well, we put in a complaint very early on, but it was at the local level.
I obviously can't speak to that because I'm not involved in it.
But as an investigation of the workings of the CLP, I would have thought you would want to interview the people who've...
As I've said, I've only.
Is it only in the context of a complaint?
As I said, I've only received information about as a result of investigating thus far. Obviously, I'm not going to comment about what I'm going to do next with that information because that would prejudice the investigation. But I can tell you that much basically. There's nothing more for me to say on that.
Okay. I don't know whether you want to...
No, I'm just curious because I haven't been in the Labour Party very long and I've certainly never been to anything like this informal interview before. And so I'm just curious about like what branch are you in?
I don't think that's relevant.
Okay.
I hope that's okay. I don't think where I'm from is at all relevant to the investigation.
Yeah, I just misunderstood. I thought the investigation bit about me not being a silent witness was...
No, it is. You're more than welcome to ask questions, but I reserve the right to not answer them, and I feel that's a question about my personal situation, which I don't think is relevant to the situation in Liverpool Riverside.
Oh, no, it might not be. It's just, but it might be interesting.
I'm not prepared to discuss my dress, basically.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
If you have anything else to add or any questions that you have regarding anything, obviously feel free to email me. I'll make a note of what you said about the SAR and I'll pass it on to the data
About
protection the subject access request.
Yeah.
SAR.
Yeah.
And I'll pass it on. I'll just say that I'll, make sure it was done thoroughly. Yeah, as I said at the beginning, I will draw up my conclusions and pass them on to the NEC Disputes panel in January, after which we hope to get an AGM sorted as quickly as possible, because obviously we're outside of the year now, so we need to get that done quickly,
Yeah.
and move forward.
Great.
So thank you for your